Today I'm going to be talking to you about metal needles that are used for magic loop. I've got 7 different needles that I'm going to review. I'm going to talk about 4 things. I'll talk about the tips of the needle, I'll talk about the needle itself, I'll talk about the join, and I'll talk about the cord. So it's a review that will hopefully help you if you're feeling like you're going to go out and buy some knitting needles to do magic loop. Before we start talking about the needles themselves, I just want to explain to you about magic loop. If you've done magic loop, then this is not new to you, but if you're thinking about trying magic loop, it's a great thing to do with socks. I used to do my socks on double pointed needles, which it was great and I loved, but if I'm in the car and I drop a needle, oh my goodness, I got to figure out where to go. So that's part of the reason why I started using magic loop. Now, the reason why we're going to talk about the join and the tips and all those good things in the review is the fact that for every row that you do magic loop, you've got to pull this needle out and swing it around. So you can see that the cable and the join come in, and then you would just knit across, and then you have to do that same thing again. So there's lots of videos about magic loop on YouTube, so you can take that for a check. And now we're going to talk about the needles themselves. For every pair of socks, I'm going to be using this yarn, which is Perfect Pair, and it's by Loops and Threads. You can buy this at Michael's. In Canada, it's $7.99 for a skein or a ball, and that will do your pair of socks. You can get oftentimes a 30% off coupon. It's great. It is made of acrylic and viscose from bamboo and polyester. So it's great if you're worried about somebody who's not going to know how to wash. It's really good. So this is what we do for the kids, and so that will help out. So that's the yarn. I wanted to be fair doing this review because I wanted to use the same yarn every single time. The first needles that I'm going to be reviewing are the Addi Turbos, and let's talk about the length. So these are 2.25 millimeter. They're 40 inches long. Now, I oftentimes will do my socks 2 at a time, so the 40 inches is important, but if you're just going to do 1 sock at a time, then 32 inches is fine. I'll explain a little bit more about that length because it actually comes into play with what I'm doing. So that's the first review I'm going to do. So let's get this out of the way, and over we come. So here is the needle, and so we're going to talk our way through. So the first of all, we're going to talk about the tips. Now these are rounded tips, so they're not as pointy or sharp as some of the tips. These are nice. I found that I was actually surprised how rounded they were when I started these socks. So that's that. The needles themselves are nickel-plated brass. And so they're very slick. There's a reason why they're called Addi Turbos, because they will go quickly, your stitches will go quickly. And because this has so much bamboo and nylon in it, sometimes it can be grabby if you don't have that slick as far as the needle itself. Now over we go to the join. And these joins are very, very smooth. The yarn comes nicely over it. There's no problem with that. So I really like the join in the Addis. So we've got the tips, the needles themselves, and the join. Now let's talk about this cable. So I'm going to lift it. Just a sec. We'll lift it and let it fall. So they talk about a cable having memory. And when it has that much memory and it flips itself around, it can get a little interesting when you're doing magic loop. So sometimes it turns around and twists. This isn't bad. The cable's flexible, but having that much memory can make it interesting. So I mentioned about the length of the needles themselves. Because this has so much memory, I'm happy that I have this as a 40-inch needle because it allows me to have more room. When I pull this out and I twist it around, then this is okay and the other side is okay, and it makes working on this needle quite lovely. So no complaints about this. They are a smoother tip. There's lots of memory in that cable, but I easily recommend those needles. No problem at all. So that's the first one. The second needle I'm going to look at is called a Knit Pro Zing, or it's also called Knitter's Pride Zings. I purchased these actually in Scotland, which is why it's Knit Pro. It tends to be that in Europe. And when you're buying them in Canada or the States, they're called Knitter's Pride Zings. So this needle itself is a 32-inch 2.25 needle. And let's take a look. So here is the yarn, a different color. I love it. Now let's take a look at these needles. First of all, let's talk about the tip. These are nice tapered needles. So I really, really like that. They're a little bit more tapered than the Addis that we just looked at. The needle itself is a lightweight metal, and they are really light. And I had these for a while and hadn't used them. And actually I'm quite pleased with how they work. So that the metal itself is lovely. It's smooth, so the stitches run quite easily across it. When we get to the joins are smooth, but there's a little bit of a catch in these, and it may just be the pair that I have. I would say that this join is not as smooth as the Addis that we just looked at. It's not a big deal. I just give the needle a little bit of a twist and it comes over no problem. You can see I've got a lot of a sock done, so I haven't wanted to scream, so it's okay. You just keep moving. Now let's talk about this cord. Oh my goodness. Look at the memory in that. All right, so this is where this is only a 32-inch needle. So that cord having that much memory makes life a little interesting. When I pull this back needle out, you can see that I don't have much give. And so I probably, if I was going to do this on a regular basis, would buy myself a 40-inch one. I like the needles themselves. As far as this part, it's great. It's a little catchy sometimes on this, but I'm not sure whether it's just the pair that I have or whether it is all of them. One of them's a little bit more catchy. I don't know if that's a word. But, you know, these are a good price for a knitting needle. So if that's something you need to take a look at, that's good. But I really do like the needle. There's nothing wrong with it. If I had to choose between this and the Addi, I probably would choose the Addi. But I do like these tips. They're very, very nice. If you've knit with Knitter's Pride Zings or Knit Pro Zings, you'll know that the tips of the needles are very nice. So that's the second one. The next needle I'm going to do a review on is the Chowgu Fixed Circular. So you can buy these as 30-inch, 32-inch, or 40-inch. I'm pretty sure what I have might be a 40-inch. Yep, I think that's what I have. So let's take a look at this one. So here's the needle. Now, I have to admit, of the needles so far, I love these tips. They're sharp and they're tapered. They're not sharp enough you're going to cut yourself, but they are nice and tapered, and that allows you to be able to work with such fine stitches. I really, really like that. Now, when I pulled this through just to see the needle themselves, these are made with surgical stainless steel. It's a very smooth finish, so the stitches just go really easily across it. So I really like the finish on these needles. And I like the weight of the stainless steel. It's nice weight. Now, it's a very smooth join as well. There's no catching on these. It's a beautiful join. Like it. You can see that I can push it across. No problem. If I had wool, it would be even slicker, but they're good. The joins are great. So I really like that part. Now, this has memory, but you can see it's not flipping like that on itself. So it kind of has this droop that's needed so that when I pull this needle out and go around, you can see this isn't fighting me at all, and it's going to make working a magic loop much nicer. So of the needles so far that I've reviewed, I like this one. This is a really nice needle. It is a fixed circular, so you can get the size that you want. You don't have to spend all the money on an interchangeable set. And these Chowgus are really, really nice sock needles. I really like that. The next needle I'm going to review comes from the Chiaogoo Twist Mini Interchangeable System. So it is a 2.25 millimeter needle, and I've chosen to use a cord that makes this 32 inches. And you can know that from previously I was saying that might be a little difficult depending on the cord, but you're going to see. Now let's talk about what's in this set. It's quite a nice set. It has this little pouch. You end up with 3 cables. You have this lovely thing that will hold all the needles. So there's 1.5, 1.75, 2, 2.25, and 2.5. So it's a nice set that way, so that takes care. In the front pocket, they have a lovely little needle gauge, just in case you don't know what you've got. And then it has this lovely little container. That is a grip that helps you tighten the needles. There are some stitch markers, some pins that will tighten the needles for you, and these are called end caps. So it's a lovely set. It actually is a very lovely set. So let me just put this all away, and then we'll take a look at the needle. You can see it's all in one spot. There you go. So let's take a look at the needle itself. So the needle themselves have that wonderful tapered tip that the other Chowgoos had. Very, very nice. I like this tip. I like the point. Yes, it is tapered and sharp, but not sharp like you're going to hurt yourself. This is also surgical grade stainless steel. So the needle itself is lovely. The stitches slide across, which is great. So I really like that. When you come to the join, let's talk about the cable first. This cable is brilliant. It is thin. It's thinner than the one that I just did, which was the fixed circular Chowgu, much thinner. And what that does is make the join much nicer. And it is a really beautiful needle to work with. Now this I put in a project bag and kinked it in one spot, but it's been able to find its way out. Once again, it doesn't have very much memory. I am working these socks on, ends up being a 32-inch needle by the time you do the tips and the cord. And you can see when I pull this out and twist it, it's not causing me problems at all. It's easy, it flops, it does what it needs to do, and it allows me to work with them. And you can see I can just pull that needle right in. It doesn't catch, and so these are really nice needles. Not everybody can afford a needle set, but take a look. Sometimes they're on sale. Sometimes you can get them from your local store if they have a needle sale. Just keep an eye out because it is a lovely set. So that's the Chowgu Mini Twist Set, interchangeable. The next set of needles I'm going to review is the Collage Circular Knitting Needles. It says easier on your hands, more uniform stitches. And the thing that I want you to understand, it says knitting lives together, and every purchase supports inclusive employment opportunities for people with disabilities. So I like that about it. Now, I purchased these on purpose to help with this review. Let's take a look. I probably wouldn't have because of the word right there. Firm cable. So that gives me an idea. It might be a little interesting. I did purchase the 40-inch. Once again, it's 2.25. So let's take a look at these needles. You can see that I haven't knit that much on this sock. And there's reasons for that, which we'll talk about in just a second. So first of all, let's talk about these tips. The tips are lovely. They're nice and pointed. And the needles themselves are square. And the idea with square needles is you don't have to use as much pressure to hold on to the needles. And it's supposed to be easier on your hands. And I've knit with square needles, and I would agree with them on that. The needles themselves are light aluminum, so they're nice to work with. I was surprised at how light they were. So the tips are not as tapered as the Chowgu, but the point is similar. Now, so we've talked about the square, it's ergonomic. Let's talk about this join. So they talk about this being a stainless steel aluminum join. And you can see that it's big. And it's bigger than the cord and just similar. There's a little bit of a dip before it gets to that. I would imagine if I was knitting a hat, it wouldn't bother me the same. But when you're working with magic loop and every round you have to pull that thing through twice, it can be a little cumbersome is the best word. So what happens is I go to pull, it gets caught, and I have to wiggle. And I kind of wiggle the needle back and forth and it comes through, but you can see to push it back, it takes some energy. If you've never done magic loop, these are not the needles for you. It's not that the needles are bad, I don't mean that, but as far as magic loop, those cause a join that just makes the work a little bit more. So it does take more effort in order to do magic loop. Now the cable, you can see, there it is, lots of memory. So when they said firm cable, they meant firm cable. It springs right back. Now I did buy the 40-inch, so you can pull it through. Once again, it's a little catchy, and then bring it through. And it's okay to do, it's not that bad, but I will tell you that I probably will change this back to another needle just because it makes life interesting. If I was using yarn that might be 100% wool and wouldn't be as grabby, then maybe I could use these again. But I am telling you right now, I probably will take these off because it just is way too much work to go around. I'm hoping my tension's the same if I change the needle. So that's the collage. I do love that they give money to help people with disabilities. So I'm not upset that I spent the money on buying the needles, and I will find a way to use them. No problem, that's for sure. So that's the Collage Square needles. The next needles I'm going to talk about are the Knitter's Pride Nova Platina. So these needles are hollow brass pipes and plated with chrome. They are lightweight and they're nice and shiny. And so it's very slick. So the needles move nicely across, no problem. They have nice tapered tips, pointy. Perhaps not quite as pointy as the Chowgoo's, but still very nice. They're nice to work with that way. And let's talk about the needle. It is very nice. They are lightweight as well. Now let's talk about the join. The join is very smooth, not a problem at all. Those needles slide right around. I'm happy with the join in these needles as well. Now this is a 32-inch needle, which is a bit of a problem because you'll see the memory in this cord. So this needle is not, I've knit this much of the sock and it hasn't let go of any of that memory. I actually had this set up in kind of that shape and that it's just stayed like that. So I'm gonna try and figure out if I can just put it in a circle and see if it will leave it for a little while and do that. But this is a 32-inch needle, and so it's causing me a little bit of trouble. The needles themselves are lovely. I'd never used them for a pair of socks, so I'm really enjoying them. So if you pull this out, no problem. If you go to pull it in, but you can see I'm in trouble. So I have to wiggle and turn and spin because of that. If this was a 40-inch needle, it probably wouldn't cause me any problems. The Nova Platinas are a good price. I have had some Nova Platinas where I used them enough that I kind of wore off some of that chrome plating, but the needles still work fine. It's not a problem at all, but I don't think that will happen with these because it's just for socks. But as I said, so the joins themselves are good, the tips are nice, the needles are nice, but the cord has a lot of memory. It says it's resilient on the website, and it says it's flexible. Well, yeah, I guess it's flexible, but it holds its shape. So that memory is causing me a bit of problems as far as this one goes. The needles themselves are nice, and so you just have to decide what you think. If I was going to be using these needles to make a hat, for instance, and had it like just a 16-inch circular, the Nova Platinas would be fine. But for magic loop, not my favorite. The last set of needles that I'm going to look at are the Addi Novels. Now, these were made in Germany and I bought them from Amazon because they were a little bit cheaper, and these actually come from Europe. You'll understand why I'm telling you that. These are 40-inch needles, which is helpful. And these are square needles. So let's take a look at these. All right, so the tips of these needles are lovely. These are pointier than the Addi Turbos, so they're great that way. But I want you to take a look at the surface of these needles. So first of all, the needles are square, but there is this little ridge in the needle, which is great if you've got some kind of slick yarn. The yarn I'm using is not slick, and so it's a little bit of extra effort to push it along. The idea is it would help somebody who is using the square needles so that they're ergonomic and help them have something to grip onto. So that's the reason for that. Now, let's take a look at the join. The join's lovely. It's just as nice as the other Addis. There's nothing there to catch. So that's very nice. I like that. Now I'm at an interesting time in the sock because I'm working the gusset decrease. So it's going to seem like it's a lot to push it through. It really isn't. It's just of the way that the needles that I'm holding on to. So the join themselves, like that's tough to push through, mostly because of that little ridge here, but the join itself is fine. Now, if you were to buy these needles, in Canada and the US, they're called Addi Rocket Squared, and they would have a blue cord. But because I purchased these and they're actually came from Europe, then what happens is I get a red cord. Same needle. Mine were a little cheaper. I'm still not sure how it comes to Europe from me, but anyway, it's nice. Now, you can take a look at the cord itself. And the cord has lots of memory. So I'm glad that I bought the 40-inch cord because I can pull this out. I can swing it around. It's not too bad. It doesn't twist so much like the other one did. And so this is nice to work with. I used these needles when I was working with another sock that I was making that didn't have the same nylon, acrylic, that kind of thing in it. And it was much easier to work with. This has a little bit, it's almost like the type of thing that an elastic will do. And what it does is it makes that ridge make it a little more complicated. So as I said, I've used these needles to make other socks and not had the same issue. But with this yarn specifically, this isn't a needle that I would use. You can see that I'm working and I've got lots of the sock done, and I'll probably finish the socks with that. But the extra bumps just are a little bit more work in your hands. So that is the Addi Novel, similar to the Addi Rocket Squared. Those are the 7 metal circular needles for Magic Loop that I reviewed. Now what I'd like to do is give you my top 3. So number 3 is the Knit Pro Zings, or Knitter's Pride Zing. And these are the gold ones, because these are 2.25. I really do like them. If I was going to purchase them again, I'd purchased a 40-inch needle, but the tips are really nice and tapered, and I think you would really, really enjoy them. These are a good price point as well, but I think you'll like them. You can see that I've got a lot done on this sock, so you can tell that I'm enjoying working with those. So that's number 3. So number 2 is the Chowgu fixed circular needle. So this is one that you would buy just as buying one needle. So these are the 2.25, these are 40-inch, and these are lovely to work with. I could use these to do 2 at a time socks. The tips are great, the join is great. The cord has some memory, but not that much. You can see that it just falls, and that's what you want. If I pull this to bring it around, it's good. So that is number 2. Easily, I would buy this again, no problem. All right, and now the one that I would spend my money on if I have enough money to spend money on. And this is the Chiaogoo mini twist set. So this allows me to have anything from a 1.5 to a 2.5. The set is nice and compact and easy to work with. And of all the needles, it has the best cord. It's slim, slick, the join is lovely. So if you want to get yourself a little treat, this is what I would invest the money in. If you've done some magic loop and you're not that fond of it, I would give this set a try. It really, really works well. And so that is my #1 choice. That's my review of metal circular sock needles for doing socks on magic loop. I hope that this is helpful to you. If you have any questions, comment down below and I'll do my best to get back to you and help you out with that. Until next time, you take care.